I've spent my entire career searching for traction. I've spent thousands of hours writing this book, understanding how the fastest growing companies in the world grow. And I've interviewed dozens of growth leaders to understand how they do it, the processes and the teams that they build. And I've spent 15 years myself working in startup growth, startup marketing, with all the bumps, bruises, ups, downs, gray hair, and worthless stock options to prove it. And hopefully in the next 12 minutes, I'll share with you the insights that I've gleaned from all of that experience so that you can understand how to find traction and new growth for your businesses without the gray hairs and, more importantly, the worthless stock options. But the truth is that every company is starved for growth. Whether you're an entrepreneur just trying to get your idea off the ground and are looking for a few people to believe so that you can go out and raise a little money and kind of get that ball rolling, or if you're a startup founder who has taken money and now you face that incredible pressure to hit those numbers that you had in your pitch deck. Or if you're a public company, the markets are starved for growth. They demand it. They place such a premium on growth that it's worth far more than even the money in the bank accounts of the biggest companies. But unfortunately, having a great product isn't enough. Everpix, an incredible story. You can Google them, read about it on The Verge. They built one of the best photo apps on the planet and ran out of money, primarily because they didn't focus on growth. But when you try to figure out how to do it and what it is, the answers are they're just unsatisfying. You know, you talk to people about, well, how do I grow? How do I get traction? And they say, oh, hustle. Like, hustle? I mean, I haven't met a startup person that doesn't hustle. You know, I've been hustling for 15 years. I'm losing my hair. I've got bags under my eyes. I look terrible. I can't hustle anymore, so there's got to be something else besides hustle. And then if you go back and try to research these amazing companies that have grown so fast, so big, and try to really figure out the genesis, the origin story of them, what you find is not the messy details of how it actually happened, but kind of a glossed over, rewritten, revisionist history that's more brand friendly for the parent company today, mostly written by the PR teams, more worried about legacy and less about us learning. And then finally, the most insidious are those blog posts, those recipes, those silver bullets, those growth hacks, yes, those growth hacks, with the, if you only do these 8 things, you'll get this 200% growth here. Do these 4 things, you can get 37% growth here. And if you just did this, all your growth problems would be fixed. But I can tell you one thing, in all my research and all my learning, no great company was built on the back of a listicle. So then, what is it? What drives growth? Well, the big thing to understand is that when you read those blog posts and those silver bullets and all those hacks, is that the world changes incredibly fast. James Currier, who's one of the smartest growth guys I know, has an incredible slide which shows the evolution of growth channels over time, how they rise, fall, and how that process happens faster and faster. And of course, we all get it on some level, right, that the world is changing quickly. But it really hit me when I listened to Jonah Peretti from BuzzFeed talk about where their content views come from. And he said that they get as many content views from Snapchat as they do from BuzzFeed.com and their apps. And that kind of blew my mind. Like, if you're worried about a Facebook and Twitter strategy, like, you're screwed. Like, it changed, you know? It's Snapchat, baby. You know, they've moved on. And so it's incredible just to think about how fast things are changing. And yet, some companies do it. Some companies do it. There we go. But how? How do they do it? Because some of the best companies, no matter the changing times, no matter the different consumer demands, crank out new growth quarter after quarter, month after month, day after day, year after year, you know, for years, for a decade. And of course, they all have amazing products, right? Growth is nothing without a great product. But beyond a great product, These companies all have a rapid experimentation culture and process that is the key for them driving fast growth. So here's an example. Satya Patel from Twitter in 2014 gave a great talk at the Agile Marketing Meetup here in San Francisco. And we all know about how Twitter drove growth between 2010 and 2012. Now, we all know their current problems, but this is a great snapshot in time to look at. And Satya said that in 2010, the Twitter team was running about half an experiment per week in growth. And then in 2011, they adopted a more agile and rapid experimentation process that allowed them to accelerate their testing to 10 tests per week. That's a 20x increase in experimentation velocity. Now, when I talk about tests, I'm talking about it in two ways, right? One way is what we all know, A/B testing, multivariate, this subject line versus that subject line, a blue button versus a red button, this landing page versus that landing page. That's one type of testing. The other type of testing is testing to discover a new growth lever, a new channel, a new segment. So when I talk testing, know that I'm talking both about discovery, which is like putting out pings into the environment to see what works, kind of like echolocation. And then also optimization. Once you find something that works, doubling down on that, optimizing, optimizing, optimizing to get the most out of it. But when you accelerate your velocity, your experimentation velocity, you learn a lot more. Right? The Twitter growth team is then learning 20 times more per week, compounded over each week for 2 years between 2011, 2012 versus 2010. And you can see that growth rate accelerate. Because a faster tempo means more learning, and more learning means more growth. So the Baylor football team, they run a high-tempo offense. And in the course of a game, they run 88 offensive plays, which is about 14 more plays on average than their opponents. Doesn't sound like a ton, but over the course of a season, that adds up to an additional 2 full extra games of offensive plays being run, 20% increase in plays. That allows them to learn more about what's working, more opportunities to score, and the results speak for themselves. Now, on a football field, it's easy to see high tempo happening, right? You see these big guys running around back and forth, coaches holding up crazy signs on the sidelines, and there's cameras everywhere. But at startups, you can't see that. If you used Twitter in 2010 and 2011, could you see the shift in their experimentation? I couldn't. I've been using Twitter since 2007. No clue that something had changed internally. And so from the outside, we look at these companies, and one day they're over here, and the next day their growth is here, and we go, whoa, how'd they do that? Like growth hacking, baby, like lightning bolt from the sky. They figured something out. It's a creative leap, and it's amazing. And that's the observer view. But inside, it looks nothing like that. Inside, it's grinding. It's hustle, hustle, hustle. Not really. It's experiment, 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 experiment. And they're just moving faster. So from the outside, it looks like they had this creative leap. But inside, it was just rapid experimentation where they're learning faster than anyone really realizes. Now, the upshot of that is that if you believe that, which I do, that it's about experimentation and not about creative leaps, then you can stop looking for the growth hacker, right? You can stop looking for the unicorn riding, pixie dust sprinkling growth hacker. You can take down your job postings, and you can just focus on the team that you have and reorient your teams, the people that you have around the priorities that matter. So this is an iconic picture of the Facebook growth team. And this tells you all you need to know about what a small growth team should look like, or kind of the makeup of a growth team. You have Mark, the executive champion of growth, making an organizational priority. Chamath, who owns growth as the head of growth. You have Chris, the VP of product. You also have the head of tech ops and the head of engineering. So when you look at growth team, it's a product engineering and cross-functional organization in your business. So that's the team. That's part one. Now, the team needs a process, right? Because the reason the Baylor football team can run 20% more plays is that they've architected a process of coaches and systems to get players on and off the field faster than anyone else, get the plays in, and get them run. So they can run it efficiently and effectively. Because if they didn't have all that coordination in that process, it would result in penalties, confusion, and it wouldn't work. Same thing internally. Going fast without a process is reckless. And recklessness does not create growth. But going fast with a process is a disciplined approach to speed. And disciplined speed creates advantage. Undisciplined speed, recklessness, casualties, disaster. Disciplined speed, advantage. So my background in college is biology, so this is a positive feedback loop, right? You go, there's 4 parts to it, they're all equally important. If you don't have one of these pieces, the whole thing breaks down. Ideas, priorities, testing, and analysis. It looks very similar to some of the things you've seen on screen already. So let's talk about ideas, the top of the funnel. Ideas are your fuel for growth. If you do not have ideas, you do not have the raw materials for growth experimentation. Linus Pauling said the best way to have a good idea is to have lots of ideas. And that's exactly what we're talking about here. And it can't be up to one person to come up with all these ideas. You want to get ideas from across the organization, from engineering, customer success, HR, legal. Everyone should be able to contribute ideas across the entire customer life cycle, from acquisition to resurrection. And you have to teach your team to think of ideas as hypotheses, right? You want them to use the scientific method. You don't want people to submit ideas like, hey, we should have ice cream on Fridays. That doesn't work. You want people to write cause and effect ideas. But not every idea is a good idea, like the ice cream idea. Maybe that's a good idea, I don't know. So you, as the growth lead, or whoever's in charge of growth, has to apply a lens and a filter to all of the growth ideas. And that lens can be set on a quarterly basis, on a monthly basis, but it's the filter that lets you look at all of the ideas coming in and decide which ones should be done to apply, to create the biggest amount of impact around the part of the business that matters most at the moment. So you can set that focus with like a North Star metric, one metric that matters, an OKR for the quarter, an identified hole in your funnel, whatever. And then you have to size and score these ideas. So there's some themes I hope you're catching here. So at Growth Hackers, which is the community of growth-minded marketers that Sean started and that I helped build, we score ideas in 3 ways: impact, confidence, and ease. And they're all scored on a system of 1 to 10, and then you take an average score, and the best ideas kind of float to the top. Impact, how much impact will it have on growth? Confidence, how confident are we in that idea? And why are we confident? Is it because of data? Is it because of user interviews? Is it because of heuristics? What is it? And then ease. How hard is it to get this experiment into the wild? Are we talking 2 days, 2 months, 2 weeks? What is it? And the growth team is responsible for nominating the growth experiments that go into the experimentation sprint. And if you're familiar with agile development, then this is going to sound really familiar to you because it borrows a lot of themes. But the biggest thing is that when you're looking at this process is the tempo at which you go through it, right? So you have to commit to a weekly testing cadence. Now, you don't have to do 10 tests a week like Twitter. That's hard. But you do have to start somewhere, and you have to measure it. Because if you don't measure it, you will get bogged down, and your experimentation will slow. And speed is the competitive advantage. So you need to be moving through this loop as quickly as you possibly can. And then you need the structure in place to make sure that the process is running. So you can use a weekly growth meeting. Think of it as like a sprint planning meeting. So it's not about brainstorming. The brainstorming happens at the idea stage. This is about getting tests out the door and being responsible to making sure that the process is moving. And then to close the loop, there has to be learning. Without learning, you're just doing random activity. You're just trying stuff. And growth is not about throwing stuff against the wall and seeing what sticks. Maybe once in a million, that'll work. But I bet, since you're here, you're hoping for better odds. So you have to learn something from every test. And your company has to have that learning shared throughout it. So it can't just be locked away. It has to be accessible. At Growth Hackers, we use a product called Canvas. It's our purpose-built software for managing an agile growth process. But you could use Confluence, you could use Google Docs, whatever. Your team has to know it, because if they don't have access to the learning, they can't create better ideas for you. And if you're not constantly creating better ideas, you're not improving your odds as you go through the process. OK, so lots of frameworks there. We have team, we have process, and we have tempo. Those are the 3 elements that you need. Team, process, tempo. So here it is, just to kind of show you it really fast in action, what it looks like. So at Growth Hackers, our weekly newsletter is really a big driver for growth for a whole bunch of different reasons. It gives us traffic, retention, better net promoter scores, whatever. One of the tests was, hey, we should move the email collector from the bottom of the site up to the top because we want more people to get this weekly newsletter. We gave this a predicted impact score of 4, which just goes to show you how hard it is to kind of predict test quality out of the gate. But it resulted in a really big win for the company. Rather than go on to something else, we went back through the loop to ideate and double down on doing even more. Could we get even more out of that optimization that we found? And so we ran 2 additional double down tests, which each had incremental gains off of the initial test. And using this process of high tempo, holding ourselves accountable to a weekly testing cadence, and moving through this framework, we're able to break out of a 3-month slump in traffic and accelerate our growth on an entire new trajectory. So there's a lot there. What are 3 things to take away? You're going to hear 19 speakers today. What should you remember about this talk? I would say 3 things. First, speed is your competitive advantage, right? Disciplined speed is your competitive advantage. Speed without discipline is recklessness, doesn't help. Speed with discipline, that's the advantage. Second, it's not about hacks. It's not about the blog posts. It's about the team. It's about the process, and it's about the tempo. And then lastly, this is not a call for you to do more things just for the sake of doing it. You're not in the business of testing for testing's sake. You're in the business of learning to create more growth. So the idea is to run as many high-quality experiments as possible. It's not just about activity for the sake of activity. It's about high quality to drive higher learning. And if you put all those things together, you can unlock similar results, I think. So thank you very much. If you want to learn more about the Canvas tool that I showed you there, you can check it out at canvas.growthhackers.com. I write a daily growth newsletter at morganbrown.co. I'm on Twitter @MorganB. And hopefully, these 15 minutes will give you enough ideas and things that you can take back to your company so that you can find growth, save yourself the lost hair, the gray hair, the broken bones, and most importantly, the worthless stock options. Thank you very much.